Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Gurtak. Its mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, and murder them! Started 5139-5051-3... Oh, sought it. Thursday. The Gurtak has been ordered to go to the Hydran border. Klingon intelligence has been monitoring communications within their border in preparation for a glorious invasion along with our allies, the Lyran. A recent communique had something of great curiosity. It spoke of a superweapon, something so powerful it could destroy entire systems. Information about this weapon can be found in the ancient ruins on a planet just inside the Hydran border, Tekerix 5. We are en route and should be at the border within the hour. The Gurtak was not a new ship, but it had never seen any action. Stationed away from the things that were happening, the D7 battlecruiser had been used mostly for sentry work and a little bit of exploration. But now the area where it was stationed was beginning to be active. The Lyran Empire was trying to expand its borders into the Kzinti hegemony and the Hydran Kingdom. They had asked for the Klingons' aid. The Klingons were not prepared to throw so many of their resources into that one area of space, but they were willing to aid the Lyrans with supplies with an eye towards getting more involved if the Lyrans were successful. However, the recent discovery that the Hydrans might be close to finding a powerful weapon had the Klingon Empire worried, and determined to make the first strike. They would find this weapon before anyone else could use it against them, even if it meant causing a war with the Hydrans. The information about the weapon was within the ancient ruins of a race long since extinct. Who they were, no one knew, and most Klingons didn't care, although Nemat Koth, sensors operator on board the Gurtak, was one of the few who did. He had studied about legendary races while training and in school. The Founders was one of those mysterious civilizations who had once had settlements across the known galaxy, and whose disappearance was still speculated on. Their technology was said to be beyond anything the Klingons had ever dreamed up. Nemat's interest in intellectual pursuits did not endear him with his classmates, and his parents were worried about him. That was why they had recommended him to his uncle, Captain Akol Koth. Nemat was good with sensors, so he would be a good crew member, and perhaps being on a warship would help him become a better Klingon. Akol took him on without hesitation. Family was important to him, both direct and indirect. By indirect, I mean he placed great importance on his crew as well, which he also considered family. They were one of the most multiracial crews of the Klingon Navy, coming from all over the Empire. There was First Officer Drukal Balud, whose belief in the basic order of things eased the captain's mind of any worry of a coup. Weapons Officer Chitair Vraksud, whose paranoid mind worked in favor of his specific position. Kluga Fenzork, the pilot, whose keen eyes often found objects on the viewscreen at the same speed they were detected. Sergeant Krat Nark, who was a stern believer in Klingon traditions. Engineer Sturd Gigidis, who was fascinated by other cultures in the same way a Starfleet officer was. And lastly, the medic and scientist Mengula Wong, whose methods of research were questionable, even by Klingon standards. But he got results, and his research was known throughout the Empire. "We are approaching the Hydran border now, Captain," Lieutenant Vraksud reported. "Should I bring us out of warp to check on Hydran status?" Captain Koth swung his chair around to glare at the navigator. "Stop before we are Klingons! We do not stop to check on whether it's safe to enter enemy territory." "Yes, sir," Vraksud responded, shrinking with shame in her chair, and they shot across the border at Warp 5. There was another reason the captain wanted to make good time besides them being Klingons. The system they were going to was not far across the border. Since it wasn't inhabited, the Hydrans didn't have any ships guarding it. But since they discovered there was something of importance on the primary world, a fleet should be on its way. The Gurtak was the only Klingon vessel in range, so they would be on their own. Captain Koth wanted to get there, claim what they wanted, and leave before facing the Hydrans. He made his way to his nephew at the sensor station. He acted casual, like he was inspecting everyone's area, but he whispered to Nemat, "Have you detected any Hydran vessels on their way?" Nemat didn't catch on to his uncle's discreetness and said aloud, "I can put that up on screen for you, Captain." "No," Akol interrupted quietly. Pointing at Nemat's screen, he said, "Bring it up here." Nemat finally got what his uncle was trying to do, so he brought up a map of a 20 light-year radius on his personal screen. He pointed at a tiny group of moving dots, all coming from different directions. "These 3 anomalies are moving in a way consistent with warp speed." Akol growled under his breath as he studied them with his eyes. They would converge on the system soon after his own ship arrived. He considered intercepting them, taking them on one by one so he would not have to face them all together. Klingon ships were often better than Hydran ones individually, but in a group, they would be outgunned, especially with a compilation of the Hydran long-range Hellbores and their short-range fusion rays. Akol soon gave up the idea of intercepting any of them. If he did, the other 2 would reach the planet while he was in combat, so the best solution was to complete the mission quickly. Before leaving, Akol asked Nemat if there had been any response from the Lyrans. He had sent a message to them just before leaving on this mission and had gotten no response. They should have ships near enough to send support should they need it. However, Nemat informed him that they had not responded. Akol recognized a look of worry on his nephew's face, so he had to wear an appearance of confidence on his own. "Never fear, my boy," Akol said, returning his commander's voice and volume. "They may yet join us for a feast of blood, and if they don't, that's just more for us." A couple crew members roared with approval, and Captain Koth returned to his seat, staring intensely at the viewscreen ahead. "You know that the Lyran government was behind the assassination of Thudasi the Great of Narwin IV, said Lieutenant Vexud, the weapons officer. Koth buried his face in his hand, muttering, "Not this again." "The propaganda news still claims it was a lone Orion mercenary with a disruptor, but you can see quite clearly that he's wearing a mask." First Officer Balud knew better than to engage Vexud in conversation. It only encouraged him. The lieutenant was kept on because he was a good gunner, but his far-out ideas and eagerness to share them made them wonder how badly they really needed him. Right now, Balud was going to the captain, studying his eyes to make sure he was fit to lead. It was Balud's duty to remove the captain by force if she found him unfit to continue. It was a duty she hoped never to perform. She believed in a rigid social order, and that everyone had their place. But if the captain was ever found to be unfit, she was prepared to kill him and take his place for the best interest of the crew and the ship. "Should I prepare a landing party?" "I will be leading them to the surface. You will take the con." "As you wish, Captain." The Gurtak arrived at Tech-Rex 5 so perfectly set up by the planet that they were already almost in orbit. Lieutenant Finzork was known for her exact precision. That, and she rolled 4 successes and a 1, so that helps. Wanting to be fast, Captain Koth had his landing party already prepared and waiting in the transport room. They included himself, Sergeant Krat Nark, who was in charge of the ship's warriors, Chief Engineer Sturd Gagaitis, in case the clue they were searching for had to be figured out mechanically or electronically, Mangula Wog, the doctor, and Nemat Koth. Akol had not wanted to take his nephew with them, but Nemat had convinced them, pointing out that he was the best at operating scanners, and they would need that to locate the ruins they were searching for. And so Akol reluctantly relented, and when they arrived, the away team was beamed down to the planet. They were on the top of a large volcanic hill. The message they had intercepted had claimed that the ruins would be somewhere in this region, and this was the best vantage point from which to search. Nemat began by holding out his tricorder and running it across the horizon in every direction. As he did, the others peered out to see what they could. The terrain was primarily rocky and wooded with occasional flat clearings. In the direction Nemat settled upon with his tricorder, they could see a primitive settlement not far from the base of the hill. "About 5 kilometers that way. There's a formation of artificial structures." "There are artificial structures right down there," Sergeant Nark pointed out, referring to the village. "Those are primitive. The ones I'm detecting have more complex architecture." Sergeant Nark scowled. He didn't like being contradicted, especially by someone as young as Nemat. He also disliked know-it-alls. The Klingon way was one of action, not study. But he remained silent out of a respect for his captain. Besides, if it wasn't for the eggheads, they wouldn't be able to conquer as much of the galaxy as they had. Captain Koth considered his options. He could see all the choices in terrain ahead of him. He could go straight through the village, which would mean either a battle, or worse, diplomacy. Either way, time would be wasted. They could take the woods around to the side, which could also slow them down, depending on how thick the underbrush was. Or they could risk traversing sharp, rocky terrain along the other side. Koth decided to take the warrior's path, heading straight through the village. The march down the mountain took a lot of time, so Lieutenant Gagaitis, the engineer, decided to fill it with some humor. "Hey guys, you know why the Scarecrow won an award? Because he was outstanding in a field. Get it? He was outstanding in a field. Nemat chuckled politely. The rest scowled. Gagaitis had recently decided he wanted to learn how to be funny, so he had memorized a bunch of jokes. He had yet to figure out how to do it well. I used to court a woman with a lazy eye. Turns out she was seeing other men. Gagaitis cracked himself up, but no one else was laughing. The captain focused on the village ahead of them. He could see some of the villagers scatter out of their huts into the woods, and a small contingent came out to meet them. Koth had a last-minute change of heart when they arrived. Deciding that there was no honor in killing such a small, poorly armed group of aliens, he told Sergeant Nark to put away his batleh. He was going to see if he could reason with them. After all, the Federation did this all the time and was a powerful empire. Gagaitis, hand me the universal translator. While the Federation had translator earbuds and voice emitters, the Klingons, who rarely treated with alien species, still relied on translation machines either in their ships or on handheld devices. Surprised that his captain had need of it, Gagaitis took a moment before searching through his pack and finding the universal translator and handing it over. The party of Klingons approached the small band of short, lizard-like tribesmen, who scowled back at them and grasped their spears. Captain Koth spoke into the translator. We are passing through your village. We don't kill you, you don't kill us. We just pass. The translator repeated what he was saying in the alien language, or at least what it sounded like their language. The lizard people seemed more fascinated by the machine than interested in what was being said, but when it was done, they stood out of the road and invited the Klingons to pass. Taken by surprise, it took Koth and his team a moment before realizing there was nothing more to it, so they walked past. Each of them watched the huts closely, expecting to be attacked, but there was nothing. Everyone but the small team who had met them had apparently fled into the woods. Koth felt great about it. He might have to try the Starfleet option more often. As they passed out of the village and began down the road that cut into the forest, Lieutenant Gagaitis took his translator back and said, You know why the monkey fell out of a tree? Anybody? Because it was dead! That one actually caused Dr. Wog to begin laughing, and the two began howling together. Nemat had barely heard him. He had his tricorder out again and turned it on. It immediately warned of life forms all around them, and some of them were throwing something. Ambush! Nemat shouted. The Klingons took on combat stances just as a hail of lances flew out of the woods. The Klingons' armor deflected some of the hits, but one of them managed to slip through a crack in the arm, and another knocked Nemat over. The other three drew their batlehs and charged the woods. Sergeant Nark got to his target first, and though the creature was fast and wily, he found its target and impaled it. The other two didn't get to theirs before a strong, invisible force seemed to be pulling at their weapons. Koth and Nark managed to keep hold of theirs, but Gagaitis' slipped from his fingers and flew out of his hands into the woods. He could just make out where it had gone, onto a large metal drum of some kind. It seemed to be a directional magnet, as it was continuing to pull at the Klingons' other weapons, and even their armor. Nemat pulled Dr. Wog with him into the woods, and the others pulled back closer to them, taking cover behind trees to make themselves and their weapons from being dragged toward the magnet. The creatures then seemed to reverse the magnet and fired metal objects at them. They were pinned down. For anyone else, this would be a reason to beam out, but not for a Klingon. This was their time to shine. The captain got a sense of where everything was and called for reinforcements to be beamed down right next to the magnet drums. First Officer Balud sent a squad of 5 soldiers, but added, The Hydrans are arriving. We've gone to red alert and won't be able to send any more after this. Understood, Captain Koth said. Hold them off as long as you can, and we will finish this as quickly as we can. The Klingons held their position as the villagers advanced. Then the squad of warriors appeared just behind the magnet drum. They fired at it, destroying the device. From this point on, the game was done using 2 game systems, ironically both called Red Alert. On the ground, we used the Star Trek Adventures Red Alert miniature system, and in space, we used my own ship battle system I had titled Red Alert. Here's how they went. On land, the Klingon officers were gathered near the center with the road next to them. The warriors were ahead and to the right. The villagers were between them and their goal. The warriors attacked the villagers with the drum. They got the extremes of a 1 and a 20, and right in the middle with a 10. The defender rolled 2 20s. D&D players might think this is an ultimate success, but in Star Trek Adventures, that's exactly the opposite. So things could not have gone worse for the villager, and he was killed. Several villagers attacked the officers from multiple sides. They hit with their wood weapons, managing to get a small amount of hits in the kinks of the armor. The Klingons struck back, and Vraxud hit. Others attacked the ones near the drum, but didn't hit. The Klingons struck back, and Vraxud hit. Others attacked the ones near the drum, but didn't hit. The melee continued in the center, ending with some more damage to the Klingons and the death of another villager. More of the villagers flooded in, and the combat became heated. Recognizing that this was not their objective, and that his nephew was taking damage, Captain Koth ordered them forward, and they slipped away. The villagers followed, and Koth forced Nemat forward, telling him to get to the ruins so he could investigate them while the rest of them held off the villagers. The aliens came at them, more and more converging on the space, doing a great deal of damage to Vraxud. He held firm along with the captain, while Gagaitis and Wog slipped away. Once they were safe, Captain Koth ordered Vraxud away, who relented only because it was an order by the captain. He then pulled away himself. The warriors, meanwhile, were taking damage in their corner. They drew the villagers toward them, giving the officers the opportunity to hurry away toward the ruins. Once they had made it away, the warriors joined them as well. This is when the Game Master realized that they had been forgetting to use momentum and threat. Bad Game Master. Bad Game Master. So they'll remember to use both in the next part. Now on to the space battle. Meanwhile, in space, the 3 Hydran ships had united and were flying at Tecorix. They included a Pegasus and 2 travelers. 2 moons were like obstacles in the way, but the Hydrans would get to the Gurtak very soon. First Officer Balud, now in the captain's chair, wanted to delay them as long as possible until Lyran reinforcements had arrived. They had contacted them earlier and they had warships on the way. Now for a quick description of the game. This is my own system I'm developing called Red Alert. It uses a lot of ideas from Starfleet battles, but it simplifies everything down to much smaller numbers. Here you can see the bridge, the power distribution, and the stats. The captain will give the orders, the engineer will disperse the power to each department, and the 4 departments will disperse their power among their stations. The turn will then continue with movement, with some optional firing and systems occurring during the movement. Then volley fire, which gives players a bonus if they waited to fire in this phase, and finally a damage control phase before starting another turn. Each ship has the same setup, though their boards are slightly different. Let's see how it goes. Balud orders helms to go slow, while the sensors scan the enemies and look for how far away the allies are. The secondary engineer places power accordingly, and the others then make their choices. The secondary sensors operator puts power across her board and makes the scans. At the end of the turn, this is where everyone is, and the sensors operator has scanned the enemies to get a general sense of their ships, but did not succeed at detecting where the Lyrans are. As a note, when the primary officer is gone, the secondary officer has lesser stats to accomplish what they're trying to do. The Hydrans are going full speed at the Klingons, 2 of them in a line, and 1 going around the side by the planet. The Gurtak continues to go slow while one of the travelers maneuvers around the moon and the other comes up from the opposite side. And the Pegasus goes right up the center. The Gurtak is leaving the planet at its flank, so it doesn't have everyone firing from all angles. It will hardly matter though, as the Hydran Hellbores go at the weakest shield. Balud now calls for full power to movement and shields and powering up weapons, so the engineer gives her phasers and disruptors. The Gurtak then maneuvers around the moon to take on one of the smaller traveler vessels. The others close in, and the 2 travelers get shots on it. This destroys their front shields and damages their rear shields. The Gurtak fires back and hits the traveler in front of it hard, but without sensors, they don't know how bad. The Pegasus launches fighters, and just in time, 2 Lyran ships have arrived. Emboldened, the Gurtak flies right at the traveler, firing on the move. It hits through the shields, damaging the traveler severely, but the other traveler comes up from behind, and together they did some internal damage on the Gurtak. With their shields down, and now surrounded by enemy vessels, the Gurtak was in trouble, and it was too far away to beam up its crew. That crew had gotten to the edge of the ruins. They moved in among the walls and began searching for signs of the information they were seeking. Nemat took the lead with his tricorder, scanning every wall, focusing on anything that looked like a star map. The villagers chased them from the area they had escaped, and the Hydrans from one of the ships beamed down into the woods nearby. They were surrounded by 2 different enemies. The crew determined to fight their foes, covering Nemat as he searched the ruins. The villagers moved in on the warriors while the Hydrans moved in on the crew. It was a deadly exchange of phaser fire on the left, and a slightly less exchange of fire against pointed sticks on the other. The Klingons managed to kill 2 Hydrans and 1 villager. More Hydrans beamed down into the ruins on the top left. Nemat had yet to go to that quadrant, and the information they were seeking was not where he was, so he would likely have to go there. The captain dove into the area to clear it for his nephew. He drew the fire of the Hydrans, so Nemat was able to sneak in and weave his way through the ruins to search for what he needed. Back with the others, the villagers wounded one of the warriors, and more swarmed in, attacking both sides. They stabbed one of the Hydrans in the groin where his heart was, killing it. Nemat at last found what he was searching for in the middle of the courtyard, but now he was the target of 4 Hydrans. Koth charged and killed one, but the others rushed the young lieutenant, who dodged their blows one by one. The others held off against the villagers and the Hydran landing party. The engineer, surrounded by villagers, took a lot of hits and was nearly killed. The Gurtak was making its way around the moon. They had most of their power in movement and defense, but since they were Klingons, they had to have a little in the phasers. The Lyran Night Panthers that were coming up had full power in their engines and shields. One was scanning the enemy ships while the other had full power in its weapons. The Gurtak was making its way around the moon pursued by fighters. Without an effective point defense system, they were being eaten away by the Fly Swarm, which was destroying their systems. They put full power to impulse to get them to the planet. However, the Pegasus was waiting for them around the corner. The one fighter swarm going at the Lyrans was destroyed by their point defense system, their expanding sphere generators, and the best roll they could get. One of the travelers came up behind the Klingon ship, firing into their rear. The secondary engineer was unable to keep up with the damage being done to the ship, and to make matters worse, he rolled a 20, causing more damage to the ship. Balud ordered full power to the engines, and Finzork flew them onto the other side of the Lyran vessels. The Pegasus followed, firing into them and destroying their weapon system. The Traveler followed and fired down the Lyrans, destroying one of their side shields. The Lyrans launched their fighters, and one of the large ships went to take out the enemy fighters, as well as the Traveler that was chasing the Gurtak. Firing their expanding field generator, they decimated the fighters and destroyed the Hydran shields. The fighters fired on the Hydran Pegasus, and with the help of their mothership, took down the Pegasus front shields. One of the Travelers came up behind the Gurtak and fired into its rear, severely damaging its hull. One more hit like that would destroy the Klingon vessel. Now the Lyrans spread out among the Hydrans and fired into them. The Hydran Iazaya was smashed to pieces, nearly destroyed. Fighters swarmed the rest as the Gurtak swung around to the planet. They lowered the right side shield and were ready to beam up the landing party. Koth ordered that Nemat be sent up first. He had the information they needed, so he was beamed away. The Hydrans attacked the captain and wounded him. One of the warriors was also killed, and the villagers moved in to finish off the remaining Klingons. That's when the crew members were beamed up. But the sergeant remained behind with his warriors, holding off the enemy while they waited to be beamed up. He moved into their space and held off the oncoming villagers, who crowded in with their weapons. Then, suddenly, they were beamed out, leaving the villagers against the Hydrans. As the crew beamed aboard one by one, the Hydran Pegasus came up behind the Gurtak, ready to finish it off. The Traveler did as well. They fired, several damaging them and causing the entire ship to rock. "We're all on board," Captain Koth shouted into the communicator, and Balud shouted to her navigator to take off, and they launched into warp. The Lyrans, meanwhile, had disabled the Iazaya. They recalled their fighters and turned toward their own space, then launched into warp. Captain Koth looked at his nephew, who was rising after having been thrown about the transporter room. He had withstood a true trial by fire and had come out of it heroic. He had proven himself a great warrior, one who did not always approve of his worth with a blade, but with gathering what the Empire truly needed. They sent the information he had collected to High Command, who had learned of the location of the ultimate weapon, just inside Gazenti space. They would send another vessel to claim this weapon. It could be the turning point, the tool used to allow the Klingons to stake their rightful place in the galaxy. Captain Koth and the others returned to their bridge to resume their stations and bring the Gurtak into repair dock. Chief Engineer Gagaitis joined them on the bridge to supervise repairs from there. As they settled into their stations, Gagaitis said, "Captain." "Yes, Lieutenant," Koth said. "Do you know what has 2 legs and bleeds?" Captain Koth was confused as he looked at the chief engineer who was repairing his ship. "No, Lieutenant. What has 2 legs and bleeds?" "Half a dog!" Gagaitis said, and he burst out laughing. One by one, others on the bridge began laughing as well, until the entire bridge was filled with laughter at the disturbing, yet very Klingon, joke. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to thumb us below, subscribe, and look us up on our social media. Also, if you would have done things differently than our players did in this video, comment below. Thank you all for watching, and share it with your friends. Happy gaming, everybody!